Hey guys, last week we had a show dedicated here on the podcast specifically for the ladies and questions that they had. And today we thought we'd do the opposite and have a show just for the guys. And so today's episode is going to be dedicated to questions that we received specifically from the male listeners. If you want to submit a question, please become a patron. And by joining us at patreon.com/Jason Evert, you can support the program and get free exclusive content and free books, all kinds of stuff that we'll send to you for free there, ways that you can keep in touch with us. All that stuff is available at patreon.com/Jason Evert. But today's show is brought to you by the folks at Daily Catholic Wisdom. You might not be familiar with this yet. It's a brand new little apostolate in the church, but it's fantastic. Daily Catholic Wisdom is a great way to start your day, just with a little inspirational quote that's going to come to you via email from a saint, from a great modern mind in the church, G.K. Chesterton, whoever. And it's going to get that quick line, awesome saint to get you going throughout the day. And then also be pointing out to some great books that are there in the church you might not be familiar with that you may want to dive into, exclusive discounts on those resources. And if you want to sign up, just go to catholicwisdom.com/chastity project and you can sign up for free there. Also, Hallow, the app, #1 Catholic app in the iTunes store. For good reason, they've got more than 700 audio-guided prayers, one of the most common of which is their Bible stories. A lot of these are sleep stories, which have different presenters. They just uploaded mine, which is, I'm reading a number of Psalms from the Old Testament, and it's a beautiful way to end your day in that prayerful reflection. And if you want to sign up now, you can get it for 30 days for free just to try out Hallow. They even have their Father Mike Schmitz. If I were to ask you, what is the #1 podcast in the iTunes charts now with the apps? I know you might think it's Lust is Boring, but actually it's not. Father Mike Schmitz has a fantastic new day-by-day walk through the Holy Scriptures, and you can access all of that also through the Hallow app. And so just go to hallow.com/Jason Evert, and you're going to get 30 days for free to check that out. And by you guys just supporting these things and trying them out for free, it tells the people at Daily Catholic Wisdom and Hallow, hey, people listen to the show, they're checking out their resources as a result of it. And it helps us to keep this mission going as well at the Lust is Boring podcast. So, and then last little business item, pilgrimage. If you've ever wanted to go to the Holy Land or to Krakow, Poland, this summer, Father Agostino Torres and myself will be leading pilgrimages to both of those places. If you click the link in the show notes, or you just go to chastity.com/pilgrimage, you'll get info on that. But sign up soon, and it's going to be an amazing adventure to both of those places. Bring some friends, bring some family. It's going to be, I think we've got one in June and another one in August, so check those out. Now, to the questions that we've got coming in today. First question, how do you maintain a long-distance relationship? Obviously, this is a tough one. I know from experience, because when I met Kristalina, we met in the Bahamas, of all places, at some chastity conference, but she lived in Colorado, I lived in California. So when the conference is over, we went our separate ways. But we stayed in touch and got to know each other better. But how do you keep that going? Whether it's a friendship you're hoping is going to bloom into a relationship, or maybe you're already in a committed relationship, but you finish college and she gets a job here, you go in there. You finish high school, she goes off to this college, you're on the other side of the country. What are you going to do? Well, a couple pointers. First thing I want you to do when it comes to long distance relationships, step #1, assess how realistic this relationship really is. For example, if you met this person online and she lives in Norway and you live in North California and she's got no plans of moving to the States and you can't relocate out there, okay, how emotionally invested do I want to be in this when I know really it might not be able to go the distance? And so first thing, okay, is this realistic? Is it possible? Hey, this is a short-term thing, long distance, eventually we'll be together. That's the first thing to assess. Second thing, realize that the blessing that this is, because a lot of times when couples are close geographically, they're more likely to get close physically. And sometimes that can blur the sensuality, blurring your judgment as to the value of that relationship. Whereas if you're at a distance, you have a certain advantage in that you can get to know each other on a less physical plane, in the sense of like, do I really get along with this girl? Because a lot of times, if people were in a relationship that is physical, if you took the physical out, a lot of times they realize, well, there's really nothing here. We don't really have that much in common. I'm not sure how much I enjoy her company, except when it's going to lead to that kind of stuff. But when that isn't even on the table, so to speak, And you really can get to know each other on a spiritual level, intellectual, as a friendship. Do your personalities click? A lot of these things become obvious if you're just communicating over the phone through a long distance relationship. So there's a bit of a blessing in that it gives you that clarity. Do I really like this girl's personality? Does she bring out the best in me? A lot of that stuff you can see with a little bit more clarity. Now, what do you do though to deepen this thing? One, because physically you can't be close, deepen other forms of intimacy. For example, intellectual intimacy. Read good books together. Like, hey, I'm reading this one. You want to read that one? Then we'll talk about it. Or let's read this book together and chat about it. So intellectually, you're growing. Spiritual intimacy, deepen that as well. One way to do that is to say, hey, let's set a time each week that we're going to be in prayer together. Maybe it's like, okay, we're going to do a 9 o'clock at night holy hour on Thursday nights. She's at her college and you're at yours. And, you're not face to face, but you're before the Blessed Sacrament together, miles and miles apart. It's a different form of intimacy, but there's other ways to connect. And so intellectual intimacy, spiritual intimacy. And when you do talk over the phone, this is point number 4, I'd say, don't overdo FaceTime. And what I mean by that is sometimes people in long distance relationships are getting online and it's just endless conversation. There's almost no room for the relationship to breathe because every night we've got this 3-hour FaceTime thing that goes on. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. And so think outside the box for ways to connect with her. Write her a letter, like a physical letter. The stamp goes in the upper right-hand corner. The return address label goes in the upper left. I know it's been a long time. Might have written a hand-written letter. Write it. Write her a letter. Tell her about your day. Tell her how you're looking forward to seeing her again. Trust me, she'll cherish that thing when she shows up in her mailbox. Like, oh, wow, he wrote me a letter. The thoughtfulness is going to mean a lot to her. You can create a little vlog, a little video of your day. Driving to work, hey, honey, I wish you were here. I'm doing this, and here's this thing I'm doing. Just making her part of your day and sending her that. And she'd like that. I had a cousin once who was in love with this girl. They grew up kind of together. And then she moved off to New York, and then he went out to Florida. He was in the Navy, and he knew that she had this favorite ice cream that apparently she couldn't get there in Manhattan, and so he ended up finding the ice cream wherever in Florida, and then he wanted to ship it to her in the middle of the summer. So she got a surprise package of ice cream. And so he finds this thing, and he's a bit of an engineer. He's a nuclear physicist for the Navy, and he builds this airtight box with dry ice and all the stuff to keep it frozen and tinfoil, whatever. And he ships this package to her, so it might take a couple days in the mail, but it's still gonna be frozen when she gets it. Now, the problem is I think he put the wrong zip code or whatever on it. So by the time she actually got this thing 2 weeks later, it was melted, it was moldy, it was breathing and she opens, she's like, oh, she has Brendan, why would you do that to me? That's horrible. So it kind of backfired, but you get the point. Think outside the box. It doesn't always have to be FaceTime all the time. That's the only way we can connect. Think outside the box, write her a letter, do something special. 5th thing that you can do, long distance relationship, work on yourself. And I don't mean just working out more so the next time she sees you think, oh, wow, we really got in shape. No, in terms of the virtue and the character, is there stuff going on in your life that is going to make your relationship weaker? Are there addictions or vices or imperfections that hey, man, I could really work on that a little bit better. So next time we're together, it's not so much an issue. So work on yourself. And then I think one of the last things I would say is when you do get to see her again, try to avoid the slingshot effect. And what I mean by slingshot is you've spent so much time far away from each other that when you finally do get to see each other, a lot of times you want to make up for lost time and you end up getting a lot more physical than you should be. But here's how sin works. If you want to be far from a woman, sin with her, because sin promises union but then delivers division. It makes you feel like you're going to be so united, but then afterwards you feel more isolated and alienated from each other. And you might think, well, I'm pretty sure this girl's going to be my wife. Well, here's the deal. If you're dating her, I can tell you 100% she's not your wife. She might be your wife a year or two from now or whatever, but right now she's not. And so you don't want to express forms of physical or sexual expression that are appropriate only within marriage. And so fight to keep this relationship authentically pure. And that doesn't just mean these hot, passionate makeout sessions, but you don't belong in her bed. Even taking naps together. Keep this relationship authentically pure. And then when you do separate from each other and you have to go back to your state or hers, it wouldn't be because I've seen couples where they get together, then they go way too far. And then they, are back far apart. And they're like, yeah, I'm sorry things got that far. Next time we'll try to be better. And then it just keeps happening and happening. So really, you be the leader in that and guard the innocence and the purity of that relationship. And I remember one guy emailed me, and I wrote the quote down here. What he said, if we don't show each other we love each other physically and sexually, then what's the difference between us being in a relationship and us just being best friends? Well, your relationship is not determined by the distance of how far you've gone with a girl, but rather the direction in which you're headed. Meaning, your relationship is not validated and proved because you get physical with a girl. Your relationship is authentic if it's like, hey, the direction of a relationship is discerning marriage. That's what makes it a relationship. And the more you love her, the more you want to guard that innocence. I remember one high school guy came up after the chastity talk and he said, man, your talk was really good. My girlfriend's here and yeah, we've messed up, but we want to start over. But he said, look, if we can't do that sexual stuff anymore, like, what are we supposed to do together? I said to the guy, like, exactly. He's like, what do you mean exactly? I'm like, now you got to think this up. You got to master the art of loving her in non-sexual ways. And if you can learn how to do that rightly, the intimacy is going to be so much deeper and that relationship long-term is going to be so much stronger. I think this is why St. John Paul II once wrote that love is a constant challenge thrown to us by God. And so this relationship, the distance, the purity, it's a battle, it's a challenge, but these challenges are given to us by God as a test of love. And so keep that relationship pure, and if it's God's will, it's going to go the distance. And if it isn't his will for your relationship to work out long run, he's got something better in store, well, then the more pure this relationship will be, the smoother the landing will be in the end. And that way, when the relationship's over, one way or the other, God willing, you can still be friends. Next question. Can you speak? This is actually a question that came in from a female listener. She said, can you speak a bit regarding the art of pursuing a woman? It seems like that's lost a lot in guys these days. Unfortunately, it has been. And I think the reason why guys don't really know this art of pursuing is because technology, in a sense, has made it so easy not to pursue, right? Because like, why pursue when there's a menu of women on my cell phone and I could just sign in, download an app, and just start swiping left and right? What it becomes is the path of least resistance. And when a guy does finally have the guts to talk to a girl in face, he's trying to come up with some cheesy pickup line as if that's what she really wants. Oh, like, I'm just waiting for the guy with the funniest pickup line. And if it's a great one, then, hey, I want to date you. It's like, dude, this is cheap stuff. Like, no, put down the apps. And, granted, there's good stuff out there. There are good online Catholic matchmaking websites that exist. Those things do exist, and they can be valid ways of meeting a potential future spouse. But in terms of the apps that literally commercialize dating, where women are basically on a menu and you're swiping left and right based simply upon what she looks like. I remember one high school guy telling me that once he discovered these apps, he's like, it's awesome. It's like you can never be rejected. And it's like no effort. And it's like, dude, we got to get beyond this. Risk has to be an essential component of courtship. I remember one woman, my wife and I, have done all these talks for the high school kids, and we came out with a book for the girls called How to Find Your Soulmate Without Losing Your Soul. And for years, the guys were like, we're the book for guys. And so we came out with this thing called the dating blueprint. And essentially what this is I realized that guys are told, be a gentleman or this and that, but no one's given them the specifics on actually how to pursue a woman. And so I surveyed more than 1,000 women and asked them, like, what would you want guys to know when it comes to dating? And, how you want to be asked out, how you don't want to be asked out. I remember one thing one woman said in this book. She said, when it comes to risk and confidence and asking a girl out, she said, I can't even imagine marrying a man who is not willing to take risk. Seeing that in a man, that you're willing to take risk. Hey, this might succeed, this might fail, but I'm not going to be hiding in the shadows in some little corner because I'm afraid of failure. Risk is a part of authentic masculinity, to go out from ourselves. And so when it comes to, you might be thinking, well, like, look, I'm not really that confident when I get around pretty girls. I get kind of awkward and clammy and saying stupid stuff. Here's my recommendation. Get used to talking to people in general. I remember for years I worked out in a normal gym and nobody talks to anybody, right? You just got all your earbuds in, you're doing your exercise, you're out the door. Maybe if you see someone that works out at the same time 50 times in a row, you'll say, hey guy, whatever, you say hello to each other. But that's pretty much it. But, a year and a half ago, I started working out at CrossFit gym, and I couldn't believe, like, wow, everybody's talking to me, and this person's talking to me. And like, wow, people talk to each other. And then you start getting into that. And then you just start talking to people. It doesn't matter if it's a he or a she, or they're attractive or not so attractive. Like, you don't care. They're just human beings. And you start to learn to start up conversations, just talk to people. And then before you know it, you get to know 10 or 20, and then it's more like this community. And it was really just an interesting experience for me over the last year and a half or so of just talking to total strangers. And then next week you see them, and then you go a little deeper, this, that. And so I would recommend trying that. Maybe you're not into CrossFit exercise or whatever, but just get used to talking to people, not caring about what they look like, whether it's a male or female, whether pretty, not pretty, whatever, just not leading people on, but just learning to have simple conversations. And once you get more confident in the sense of that, of just like, hey, I can do this with normal people, then it'll become more natural to talk to attractive women in that way. And then when you do talk to those women, I think what they're really looking for isn't some cheesy, corny pickup line. It's intentionality, which means sincerity. That you're not just flirting with a girl for the sake of feeling desired or to play with her heart. There's clarity, there's sincerity, there's intentionality, that you see a potential future there. And that's why, you're having that discussion with them. And so have that clarity, have that intentionality. Even if you don't feel confident, hey, the fact that you'd be willing to risk rejection not only makes you look more attractive because you have a little bit of confidence, it makes her feel more attractive because she's not dumb and she knows that you're willing to face the risk of rejection. But the very fact that you would be willing to be rejected just to have a chance to talk to her makes her feel more attractive as well. And so it's a win-win. And if you try and it doesn't work out, hey man, you know what? That's okay. If she says she's not interested, hey, you've just narrowed down your search for a future spouse by one. The world's a big place. I think there's like 3.7 billion women on the planet, and you've just narrowed down your search for the future spouse by one. Hey, win-win. Either you end up with a date or you end up with clarity, either of which is better than being uncertain and alone. So next question that came in was, a guy asked, why is porn bad if the women in it are willing? Well, I want you to start thinking of women in porn not as like supermodels, porn stars, but like sisters, okay? Sister in humanity. Now, if your sister were doing something that was objectively harmful to her, would you say, yeah, my sister is, a methamphetamine addict, but it's really not that bad because she's willing to do it? It's like, well, no, yeah, my sister cuts and she suffers with, harming her body, but she's willing to do that. Or my sister's an alcoholic, but she's willing. The goodness of an act is not determined by our willingness to engage in it. And so when it comes to the porn industry, I think it isn't what they really want. This isn't what the women really want, because porn exists not because it shows so much. Porn exists because it shows so incredibly little of these women. If it really showed these women in their fullness, psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, everything going on in their lives, it'd be way too much for the men. And so no, just reduce her to the flesh, reduce her to the body, show me nothing but the body. Because if I see the whole person and that she was sexually abused when she was 12, or now she's an alcoholic, no, or she had an abortion through, no. Just give me the body. It's a reduction of the human person to the sexual value. It's the only reason it exists. And so when it comes to porn, I want to invite you on a little kind of a thought experiment that when it comes to porn, it's not that she's seduced by you, right? I mean, because the women in porn are not seduced by the guys. What you're being seduced by is the fairy tale that you seduce her. It's not simply she's seducing you. You're being seduced by the idea that you seduce her, by the way she looks back at you. Because your heart, your mind, your intellect doesn't know any different but to look at the way she looks at you. And if that, but what if she really looked at you with how she actually feels? If actually feels in that moment and what she actually thinks of you. It's kind of like, those like birth control advertisements or whatever, where the images they show on the screen are like these happy girls, skipping through fields of daisies and holding hands and walking on the dock with her boyfriend or whatever. But then all you hear audibly is like this mumbling voice. This may cause, pulmonary embolism and, blood clots and this and that and stroke, heart attack, nausea, hair loss, diabetes. It's like, but on the screen, it's all these like romantic images, but everything you're hearing through ears is totally different. Now, so I want to try something when it comes to the pornography. Yeah, in the image, she's looking all seductive or whatever, but what's actually going on? What if she actually looked at you with the eyes of how she truly sees you on the other side of that screen, having an erotic moment with your cell phone in the bathroom, sitting with your laptop while your wife is in the next room, thinking that you're not going to get caught, and so you can take a quick peek? How would that woman on the other side of the screen actually look at you? Well, I know a friend who interviewed a woman who was actually leaving the adult industry. And he asked her, like, what's it like when you're, on stage in front of these guys at these strip clubs? Like, what's going through your mind when you see these guys looking at you this way? And here's what she actually said. She said, it makes me feel sick. A lot of the time, I just try to imagine they're not there or something, but part of it is making them feel special. Looking into their eyes is really important. And I hate having to do that because I hate them all. I always have thoughts like, I hate you so much, please die. I only work on Saturdays. I hate to do it more than once a week. It's mentally and physically exhausting. Having to sit and talk to guys and act interested in their lives is the worst part. When I work there, I buy so much alcohol to cope with it, or even when I'm getting ready for work, I'll have a bottle of vodka or rum in my room so I can cope with the night, and a lot of money I earn goes on that. But I don't even drink most of the time when I go out with my friends, just Saturday nights when I know what I have to face at work. The job has made me completely lose faith in love and marriage. Yes, nearly all the regulars are married and decent men. I've come to hate it so much. I've tried having a few relationships since I started this job, and I just couldn't feel anything for anyone anymore. Is this really what a woman wants? Is this really like, hey, porn's okay because she's willing to do it? Like, no, let's show a lot more than porn does. Let's show everything. Let's reveal the full woman in her personhood. And then if we do, we can see her for what she truly is, our sister in humanity. And then instead of feeling a temptation to lust after her, we're going to feel what we ought to feel, which is an inclination to pity her and extend love through intercession and prayer for her. That's what they deserve because they're created in the image and likeness of God, who is love, as are we as men, and nothing less than that will satisfy us. Next question. My girlfriend just broke up with me and I'm crushed. Why would God let this happen? Well, honestly, I've been there as well. It's rough. It's hard. I feel for you right now. And I often find that, almost like as long as a relationship is, I think it almost takes like half as long as that to kind of recover, right? So if you like date a girl for a year, sometimes it just takes 6 months to feel normal again. And obviously that depends on the intensity of the relationship, but look, like I've been there. Like I know what it's like. Like you can't even eat, right? You can't sleep. You're so distracted at work. You're distracted at home. You're distracted. Like it's just like this cloud that's following you around all the time. And so what do you do? How do you work through that? I'm going to give you a couple pointers that I found to be helpful going through some tough breakups myself. First, learn from this experience, but don't beat yourself up over it, right? Because you might be sitting here tempted to think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I couldn't have done that. Look, don't beat yourself up, right? Maybe there's something to learn here. Yeah, I could have done this better. I could have done that better. Okay, gain some wisdom there. It's not a total loss as much as it might feel like one. You've learned a lot about relationships through this whole process. You probably learned a lot about yourself. And maybe you learn, okay, those qualities that I really loved about her, I want those in a future wife. And maybe you can't even imagine a future wife being any better than the girl that just left you. But think of those qualities that you really want in a future wife that she had. Those are good desires. Hold on to those desires and say, yeah, like I still want that in a future spouse. And maybe I just got ahead of myself. Maybe I was thinking, I know this is the one, and one day we're going to have white picket fence and 3 kids and a dog and all, a farm and all. Like you get so far ahead of yourself. And when the future doesn't pan out as we had planned, then we're inconsolable. And it's partly because we got ahead of ourselves. And so take a step back and see what you can learn from this relationship because it's not a total loss. Second thing, give her some space, right? If she's saying, I need to end this thing, be respectful about that. Instead of just being like, well, no, no, we can make this work. We can make it work, and keep calling her and nagging her and texting her. It's like, you got to respect her, because if you keep, just trying to impose your own will upon her, it's just all the more evidence that you don't respect her as she deserves to be respected. So as painful as it is to do, give her space, because should she choose to return, she needs freedom to do that instead of coercion. Now, third point, take this time right now to reconnect with other people. A lot of times when we get in a relationship, it's super intense. A lot of times our relationships with others atrophy. They get really weak. And whether it's your relationship with your friends, your buddies, whether it's a relationship with other females that are just good friends, your family members, reconnect with others. Because right now, you are in a state of desolation. That is normal. It's totally understandable, but you need real consolations, which leads us to point 4. Avoid false consolations, meaning, man, I am so bummed out about this. I'm going to go get drunk with my buddy friends. I am so ticked off about this. I'm so hurt by this. I need to bury the hurt. I'm going to smoke some weed. I'm going to look at porn. I'm going to play video games for 12 hours. I'm going to just scroll around endlessly on social media and YouTube videos, like binge on all this. Like, no. Don't go to the false consolations. Don't even rush back into another relationship. Almost like you're jumping from like a frog on a lily pad onto the next one. It's like, no, I know it hurts, but don't try to scrub out the pain so fast. Go to the true consolations, not the false ones. So avoid stuff that's going to only leave you feeling emptier. 5th thing I would say, as much as you can, as a toughie, and these are going to get kind of progressively harder, live in the present moment. Because right now, your brain is all over the place. Your brain is thinking, dude, what did I do wrong? And maybe it's obvious, like, oh, yeah, I did this stupid thing, and if I hadn't done that, I'd still have the girl. Or maybe you're just torn up, like, what did I do? Like, what did I not, like, what did I do wrong? Maybe I shouldn't have done this, shouldn't have done that. And you start living in the past. Or you're living in the future. Well, wait a minute, I thought this was going to happen. Now that's never going to happen. And what if she doesn't come back? And what if this? And what if, and you're living in the past. You're living in the future. That's exactly where the devil wants you. Anywhere but the present moment. Go dwell in the past, go dwell in the future, because God's not there. God revealed himself to Moses, didn't say, I am who will be, or I am who used to be. I am who am. God is intensely in the present moment, and that's where he wants you to live. And so when you start beating yourself up about the past, having this gnawing anxiety about the future, draw your heart back to the present moment, and it's going to sting, it's going to hurt, but be there with God, which leads us to point 6. Reconnect with God. Talk to him about this stuff. If you read the book of Psalms in the Old Testament, they're raw with human emotion of just crying out to God, of just, God, why would you let this happen? And the despair at times, this defeat, the agony, the betrayal, the loneliness. My one companion is darkness. And, why won't you answer me, God? This is all real prayer. So read those Psalms, spend time in the Old Testament, because trust at the end of the day is not a feeling, it's a decision. Psalm 62 says, my soul rests in God alone. It's the only place we're going to find rest. Imagine on your heart like a throne, and we can choose who we put on that throne. If we put a human being on there, it's going to be like a roller coaster, right? If God is firmly in the place of that throne on our heart, will we truly have peace. And now it's time to give him his kingship of your heart back, instead of placing all your hope and all your peace in another human being. Now, to feel what you're feeling is natural, totally normal. It's going to happen. When you get that connected and things don't work out the way you hope, there's going to be pain there. So what do you do with the pain? Like I said, it's going to get progressively harder. Rejoice. And like, wait, what? Rejoice? I'm going to give you 3 Bible verses to chew on. First is from Sirach, chapter 39. The author says, the works of the Lord are all good, and he will supply every need in its hour. And no one can say this is worse than that, for all things will prove good in their season. So now sing praise with all of your heart and voice, and bless the name of the Lord. I'll also give you 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. Rejoice always, pray constantly, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. And then lastly, the prophet Nehemiah in chapter 8 says, do not be saddened this day, for rejoicing in the Lord must be your strength. Now, rejoicing in God in this moment of profound brokenheartedness might seem like the furthest thing, but the prophet Nehemiah tells that's your strength, that God isn't just good when his plans are our plans. God is still good and deserving of worship when our plans don't align as well. And so praise him before his providence unfolds, because maybe he saw something down the future that would never have been if this relationship continued. Odds are he's got something in store for you. I know he does. I mean, he promises in the scriptures, for I know well the plans I have in mind for you, plans to give you a future full of hope. And when you come to me, when you seek me with all of your heart, you'll find me with you, and I will change your lot. That is the promise from the book of Jeremiah. God knows the plans. You don't know them. I don't know them, but he does. And if he's a loving father, then he's going to bring a greater good out of this. Maybe one day, whether it's a year from now, 5 years from now, I don't know, if you're called to marriage, he's going to bring that woman into your life. And had this relationship not come to a close, maybe you wouldn't have recognized the next woman who is to be your spouse. Who knows? And that if you hadn't met her, then God willing, those children that you could have together would never possibly have come into existence. And so God alone knows his plans for all of these things. And right now, I know a lot of it might not make sense. Maybe you can pinpoint, I know why she broke up with me. It's because I was dumb and I did this. Or maybe it's like, dude, I thought everything was fine. And now she doesn't know what she wants. And it's so confusing. And who knows? Put all of that in God's hands. And then lastly, offer up your suffering. Don't waste your suffering. Suffering has tremendous spiritual value. If we say, God, I accept this suffering for love of you, and I offer it up for whatever you want, God, for souls. In fact, there was one woman beatified in the church. Her name is Blessed Mary Teresa of St. Joseph. That pretty much covers the whole community of saints. But here's what she says: I have but one wish, to suffer as much as possible for this short while. It does not matter what kind of suffering, as long as it's suffering. From my heart, I bless and thank all who have caused me to suffer. To suffer for God is the only joy which heaven does not have. And obviously, we're in the deep end here in terms of theology. We're in the deep waters here of like, wait a minute, desiring to suffer for love of God, that this is a joy that heaven itself doesn't even have. These are profound mysteries. But to say, God, you know what? In the midst of my suffering, I accept this for love of you. I trust you, and I offer this up. I will not turn to false consolations. I will turn my heart back to you. And when she comes to mind, instead of tearing myself with anxieties and worries about the past, I will stop. I will pray for her. I will pray for God's will to be done in her life and my life, so that my heart and hers can rest alone in peace in you and God alone. And so, my friend, I know it's hard right now, but I promise there are years of your life that ask questions, and there are years that have answers. This might not be the answer year. Right now, this might be the year of questions, but it's okay. Those years are going to come. The answers are going to come as well. But God is the one who has the answers to place all of your trust in him. So with that, again, if you got other questions you'd like to hear answered on the show, please submit them through Patreon, our website, patreon.com/Jason Evert. You can support us there for any amount. And in exchange, we send you free t-shirts, give you my email, and keep in touch that way. All that stuff is on Patreon. And then you can ask questions. We'll answer here on the show. And you can tell us what topics you want us to cover as well. And we'd be happy to dive in on those as well. So guys, God bless you. Be assured of my prayers. St. Joseph, terror of demons, pray for us. God bless.